Hey, Jody here. This week's video was shot at Apex Welding's Fab Shop. My friend JD Brewer, that's his business. He's building a mezzanine for some local industry. Needed to build a trolley system to unload metal off the delivery truck. Lengths of 6-inch box tubing and 6-inch I-beam. That's some pretty heavy stuff. To move it without a forklift, he needed the trolley system. So I filmed that build, and along the way, we did some testing on Metabo grinder versus cut and torch on cutting that stuff up. You'll be surprised to see the results. We'll do some dual shield flux core welding and talk about some other little tools that he uses for marking and cutting material like that. All right, let's get into it. All right, getting ready for the material delivery of stuff this size and bigger. This is 6-inch square tubing, roughly 3/8 wall thickness. So doing some cutting here on a horizontal bandsaw. I thought it was interesting here, the little leveling pads that have Acme threads on them there. Sometimes JD takes this on the site, on job site. You never know what kind of floor you're going to be dealing with, so it just lets him level it up to match the sawhorses. And so we're going to be doing some cutting with a grinder today, as well as a cut and torch, along with unloading metal, and just a day in the life of JD at his shop at Apex Welding. A little bit later in the video, we're going to compare how this 6-inch Metabo does on cutting stuff like this. Again, that's 6-inch tubing, 3/8 wall thickness. And this little deal I've shown before too is so handy for getting up grinding dust and shavings and whatnot. So these pieces that were just cut are going to go outside in the gravel for the base of the trolley system. So we're going to weld up 2 T's here using dual shield flux core, 0.45 diameter. That's like 1.1 millimeter. And these are rough settings that go with that. 25 volts, roughly 300 and something inches a minute. In this case, 315 inches a minute. It's pretty heavy stuff, so once you get it square, you just get small tacks. You don't have to worry about it moving around too much. Dual shield flux core is just a super productive process, and that's why JD uses it a lot for building mezzanines and ladders and you name it. It's just, you know, it's kind of like a 7018 in the way the puddle looks, but it's just so much more productive, not having to stop, not having the waste of the rod stubs, not having all those restarts and everything. It just helps him make a profit at the end of the day. This is the weld symbol that you might see on this joint on square tubing. Because of the radius corner, it is a flare bevel groove weld. And without a dimension next to it, you have to assume it's full penetration. And that's always a point of contention in shops. The designer will draw it with no dimension, and then the inspections like, this is a full penetration weld. And so sometimes you might see it like this in parentheses. That's the actual weld size. If they don't list parentheses, that would mean the depth of preparation. And so I'm just bringing that up. This just comes up all the time in shops where there's designers making weld symbols, and then there's inspectors trying to make sure that the weld symbol was complied with. A lot of times those flare bevel welds will take 2 passes to get enough weld on them. Most of the time they will. A root pass and a second pass, and then sometimes even one over top of that if you want a little reinforcement on it. These little dollies are super handy. Now this is strictly staged for YouTube entertainment here, so we made sure no one's standing anywhere close. Actually figured that was safer than trying to hand it to somebody down, you know, off of the loading dock there. And it's certainly not going to hurt them by hitting the gravel. So again, these are the base for the tall trolley system, the outside portion of it. A lot of digging going on here in the 98-degree Georgia weather. So getting those pretty level and then tying them together with a piece of square tubing lets us proceed here. We're going to do a little bit of 7018 stick welding. Got them tied together now and welded up with that piece of 2-inch square tubing there. And now it's ready to stand up the uprights here, which came off of another gantry crane inside the shop. JD had 2 or 3 on casters, and so he just cut the casters off. He's using these for the uprights here. We're just tacking this thing up, getting it all plumb, and then just stitch welding it, maybe 2 or 3 inch welds every 2 or 3 inches.
Zoomed in up and down on you.
All right, I'll see you in the morning then.
Hey, buddy.
See you, Joe.
At this point right here, I had to go film some dual shield with Andrew Carden, so I missed a couple of days. JD filmed some clips for me to piece the pieces together so you can see. But this is the finished product, ready to transfer metal off of a truck into the shop. So you see the extensions to get it up the right height. You just use some pieces off of another older piece of equipment in there, so we didn't have to fabricate new ones, but that got the piece up to the right height. So basically the outside is stationary, fixed, and then the inside is on this gantry with casters on it, and it's connected in the middle right where the door rolls up, and we'll show you that later. He can disconnect it and then get the door down. So this is a really super useful little dolly here with these pieces of angle welded on it for hauling pipe around and whatnot. And that comes in real handy for work like this as well, along with just some other heavy-duty dollies. So the square tubing is first. That's quite a lot of weight. There's also some 3/4 inch plate there and some other stuff. Just a lot of weight. And really, this is much better and easier than a forklift for stuff like this. Given the size of the door opening, you know, having to snake that in with a forklift would be a little bit of a chore. I'm just showing some examples here of just the, you know, several loads actually. The truck, you can see the truck is empty now, and then here comes another load of this beam. And we're going to do some cutting on this beam with a cutting torch versus Metabo 6-inch grinder in just a minute. And like I said, all this material is for a big mezzanine project. So here's the grating that's going to deck it. Apex Welding Services. I don't know what this is. It looks like, actually, more than anything, it's a Gopro drop test.
I'm not attached to that. I'm actually up there.
Okay.
See that blue I-beam?
Yeah.
I'm sitting on it, and the red, the main one on the outside as well. It's bridged between those two, just dropping off right now.
In case you didn't catch that, there is some threaded rod supports that you can't see right here. A couple of them coming down to support this middle here at the connection. And that's where they disconnect so that you can lock up at night when the workday is over. Again, the trolley system on the left here is on wheels. So we pull that back a foot or so, and it lets you close the roll down door. All right, going to get this up on 4 heavy-duty sawhorses and start laying it out and cutting. Now this is a Flange Wizard brand marking tool, and it's pretty nice. JD likes it anyway. For marking something like this, it's very handy rather than trying to transfer all those marks, you know, with a square up in there in that web. And it's a pretty versatile little tool too. It's got an angle finder on it it's fairly got a precision scale on it. So here's the part number if you're interested in looking it up. MMB 500 by Flange Wizard. Quick disconnects. really come in handy on the job site. And this is a straight edge. This is not Flange Wizard. It's actually a Curvomark, I think. It's a magnetic burning guide, and it works pretty good. There's also a little block that attaches to the torch head there that's got a hardened steel rod, like a piece of drill rod or something, that slides pretty easily on the aluminum bar. Anything to make things a little easier and a little quicker when you're in business for yourself makes a difference at the end of the day. The thing that JD does that makes this so easy is he just tilts it down, lines it up with the mark, and then tilts it back, and that puts it in just about the right spot for the torch that he's using, to take in account for, you know, half of the tip to rest against the piece of aluminum bar there. And so it lines it up automatically by doing that, and it's very, very quick for him to set that guide bar up and then not have to bump it around and get it the right distance. I'll show you that again in case you didn't catch it. Just lines it up with the soapstone mark on the edge, then tilts it back, and then done. It's right where it needs to be. So now finishing this cut up on the inside there. We timed this. We had a timer running. Going to hit it with a hard rock, followed by a flap disc. Get all the burrs off of it. And then we recorded the time. And this cut here with the cutting time and the grinding and prep time, 6 minutes and 14 seconds here. So we're going to see how the 6-inch Metabo with this particular blade stacks up to that. And of course I already know because I'm narrating this after the fact, but we'll see. This looks like a heck of a big job for a grinder with a cutting wheel. It's very surprising how quickly it cuts into it, and of course very minimal cleanup when you're finished with this. So I've cut out a whole lot of time here I don't want you to have to watch something for 5 or 6 minutes. Now just all that needs is just a slight lick with a flap disc for deburring and everything, and total time there 5 minutes 42 seconds. So I was kind of surprised to see that. I would have thought the cutting torch would probably beat it by quite a bit, and maybe some people could, but it just goes to show you that 6-inch Metabo grinder is one heck of a handy tool to have if you're going on site somewhere. We did the same thing, cutting the square tubing. Kind of did a little race on that to see which would win, the torch versus the grinder. And really it's all because you have to prep it quite a bit when you're done with the torch. Even if you get a pretty good cut, you got to get slag off and everything. So 5 minutes and 27 seconds to cut the square tubing and prep it with a flap disc. Well, let's see how the 6-inch Metabo fares here. It's going to be a lot less prep with the grinding wheel than there was with the torch.
But it's still doable.
Metabo wins again, 3.5 minutes. About a 1/2 inch thick steel seems to be where the torch begins to beat the Metabo. This is 3/4 inch. And the torch definitely was faster even with prep time. So these 3/4 plates are the base plates that the upright columns will mount to for the mezzanine, and we'll show fitting and welding those in a future video, hopefully. Special thanks to JD for letting me come and film this stuff. I think it's a pretty good little peek behind the window of normal stuff that goes on in a fab shop or a welding business, stuff you're up against just trying to make things happen. All right, thanks JD.